So over the summer, before he got here, I was here, but he was not here. He's Stefan Krajisnik. I'm Stephen Means. Over the summer, Ryan Day brought up the idea of Caleb Downs playing running back in a pinch. Not like long term, but just doing a little bit. And he even said that he had taken some reps at running back during the spring. Well, we talked with Caleb Downs here about a week before Ohio State kicks off his season against Akron, and he said the last time he had done it was over the summer. So sometimes you got to ask a dumb question to get a smart answer, right? So I went, hey, when Ryan says that, do you take it seriously? And he goes, of course I take it seriously. And it led to this long conversation around the idea of Caleb Downs potentially playing running back at Ohio State, even if it's in a small way. What did he have to say about that, Stefan? But then also, what do you think of the idea of Ohio State's best safety, the best safety in the country, potentially carrying the ball on offense in 2024?
Well, what I think about it is it's really exciting. It'd be really cool to watch because he's a guy that, he's talking about working in punt return as well. And someone asked him, well, what's your mentality when you have the ball in your hands? He said, score. That he left it at that. So he's a guy where you want the ball in his hands, whether it's an interception. We've talked a lot about the potential he has to get some pick sixes, whether it's on offense. He said that the ideal snap count, if you're playing, both sides, primarily safety and with some running back, is 10 snaps. And I think when you look at that, it makes sense because putting him in for 2 snaps is going to tell the defense, hey, he's in, he's getting the ball, right? Like, you're not putting him in Caleb Downs for 2 snaps if he's not getting the ball at those 2 snaps. Putting him in for 10, now that mixes things up a little bit. He can serve as a decoy on some plays. He can get the ball on some plays. So I think that's what makes it interesting. And there's obvious benefits to giving him the ball. Obviously, there's the other side of you don't want to wear him out because he is one of the best safeties in the country. And you mentioned, guys like Travis Hunter, they get exhausted as the game goes on sometimes, right? And, Caleb, with that snap count, it would seem like things would work out pretty well for him if that was the situation. And I think that's something you can watch. Also, another thing that we've talked a lot about this offseason is after Travion and Quinshawn, what's the running back room look like? It's young. It's got potential, right? Like, guys could step up and be really good as that third option and show you what you have, for the future. But you kind of need to mix some things up to have some depth. 10 snaps, that's a lot of snaps to take off of Quinshawn and Travion for over the course of a game, and then obviously over the course of a season when you stretch that out. So it's interesting. I think it's very real. Maybe it gets bigger in 2025, but I think in 2024 it's something to keep an eye out, especially in those big games. Is he out there for 10 snaps, and is he being used by this Ohio State offense?
So I mentioned it on the Buckeye Talk podcast, the idea of him catching the game winner for the national championship. I think it's still interesting. I do think this is a 2025 conversation, though. Oregon is interesting. Penn State is interesting. Michigan is interesting. Pulling that out of your hat when you've been working on it for a couple of weeks. And maybe you even show looks of Caleb out there. And those how you get to the 10 snaps. Maybe it's not 10 snaps a game. Maybe it's just 10 snaps total throughout the year. But every week, you throw Caleb out there. 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 And then you get to a big game and you finally actually give him the ball. And it's in a big moment at a big point in the game. And
you get to the playoff and you're playing against a non-Big Ten team that hasn't watched a lot of your film and they haven't seen these 15 snaps that Caleb's playing. It's like, boom, like this SEC team did not see this coming. I mean, maybe SEC teams would because they've seen Caleb. But like a Big 12 team, an ACC team doesn't see it coming, and you pull that out of your head. Could be a big play. Could be the difference between a win and a loss.
He's dynamic enough to be able to do it. And so the question is, how often does he do it this year? But then next year, when you lose a lot of this talent to the NFL and you're looking for creative ways with Chip Kelly as your offensive coordinator to get things cooking, I brought this up to somebody. That's an interesting way to get a Heisman Trophy campaign started for a defensive player, right? Travis Hunter, who you mentioned before, I brought that up to Caleb, who he said he was doing it at a high level, but also he's an outlier, even when you're talking about some of the defensive players who have played both ways in the past. Travis Hunter being 50-50 is very much an outlier. This is more like Charles Woodson, where he's a defensive guy who did a little bit of stuff with the ball in his hands and it won him the Heisman Trophy. I don't think it's a thing that much in 2024, but I do think in 2025, when you're looking for weapons, number 2 at safety might be a viable option that Ohio State uses long-term as part of its offensive game plan, or at least in its special teams as a punt returner or a kick returner. I'm Stephen Means. That's Stefan Krajisnik. Get the text, 614-350-3315, when we'll continue to have this conversation at Buckeye Talk. Go listen to that wherever you find podcasts. Talk to you guys later.